2 hours,
Okay.
actually. Good evening, everybody. We're back on. This is the Sea Smoke Show. CY on the controls in New York City. We have Gregory Morrison. He's out west. And what kind of time is that? That Pacific
Pacific
time, no?
time. Yes, six
All
o'clock our
right.
time.
All right. G. Michael Reed here. I'm the man dubbed as the chairman of this, but of course, this is a all of us are involved in this, and all of us have the responsibility of making it move. We try to bring you topics of interest, and we try to bring you guests that have things that can be useful to us. Of course, our primary objective is to try to bridge this gap between Belizeans at home and Belizeans in the diaspora. But there are many other areas that we cover, including current affairs. We're honored, more than honored this evening, to have with us a gentleman, Mr. Harold Usher. He's made his mark at home and abroad. Mr. Usher, where do you live now?
I live in Canada, London, Ontario, Canada.
Okay, so I saw on your resume you were a city councillor for the City of London. Was
That's
that
right.
London, Canada, or London, England?
No, London, Canada.
Wonderful. All right, how would you define the differences between the way we are governed and the way Canada runs its government?
Well, I won't try to be an expert on how Belize operate with the government, but I will say to you that the city council runs different from a provincial government, which is like American state government, and different from the national government, in that they have parties. They're voted in by party. At the city council level, we're voted in on an individual basis. We don't go by parties. We don't have to belong to parties or anything. So the public likes us or don't like us, and they vote for us on that basis.
And they hold you accountable. They're the ones that hold you accountable then.
Right. It's
Yeah.
the citizens who hold us accountable.
Wonderful. Yeah. I don't know. When you say you're not sure about the way in Belize, I could tell you in a nutshell, helter skelter. I don't think we certainly have that kind of system, common sense system that you have over there. I've always felt that our politicians should be answerable to the people, and the people should hold their feet to the fire. I
Yeah.
don't see that happening a lot.
Yeah.
We know that Joe Cowie is a former mayor of Belize City, actually, and certainly a former city councillor. So he will have a lot of things to share with you about too, no? And some questions to ask. How long have you been abroad, Mr. Usher?
Um, abroad. I would say 62 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, that's a lifetime and then some. Let's introduce Joe. Joe, you got one. You got
Little
something for your
ruffling,
mic. You
little
got one.
ruffling sound.
A ruffling there, some the wind that blow through the window, and the fan that blow up on the mic.
Hold
All
on.
right, that's better.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
Yeah, that's better, I think.
Till you moved actually.
So G Mike.
All right.
Yeah, yes,
I-
Mr. Usher. So
I,
62 years. All in,
Actually, Mike, it's 63 and a half years because
Correction.
I spent 3.5 years in Jamaica,
but who's
and I
counting, right?
just celebrated my 60th year in Canada on the 1st of July.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, so you
that's
went to
not really
Jamaica
nice.
first, then to Canada.
Yeah.
No time in the US of A.
No, I visited the US a lot since
Yeah.
I've been in Canada, but I also spent a year before that in Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay.
I got a
There's a
scholarship
radio
in the
going
19
on somewhere.
I got a scholarship in the 1950s before I went to Jamaica to go to Puerto Rico for a year. Eisenhower had a program called the Point Four program. It was a program where he was going to develop different parts of the world. And in that constitution, or whatever it was, memorandum that he wrote, it was such and such and such 3 point that, and then he had 3.4, and point 4 was to develop the Caribbean countries through taking individuals and bringing them to mostly Puerto Rico and train them at the vocational schools for a year. So
Okay.
Belize used to send about 10 people to Puerto Rico each year
Okay.
from about 1951 right through until 1961. I happened to be one of those in 1958
Wow.
Okay.
that
Can
went to
you
Puerto Rico.
can you remember any other notable names that we might remember that
That went
went
to
there?
Puerto Rico.
Yes.
When I went, there was Fred Card, there was Henry Hornby. We used to call him Ambi. There's a fellow named Burns. I can't remember his first name. There was a guy named Bradley. Um, I can't. I can't. Fred Card. I don't know if I mentioned his name.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Those were the ones with in my era.
Right.
And there were some other people from our districts who went to study agriculture. I can't
Okay.
remember their names. But there was also a fellow who used to work at Brody's. I don't remember his name, but he was the first person that I knew that went to Puerto Rico on a scholarship. He went to study radio repair.
Okay.
And he came back and worked at Brothers and repair radio because Brothers used to sell radio,
Yes.
Right.
and
Right. Right.
therefore they used to repair the radio also. The same way they used to sell iron, gasoline
Uh-huh.
iron, and they
Uh-huh.
used to take on the repair of it. And they had somebody specific to do the repair. Likewise, somebody specific to do the radio. So those are the. There was another lady that I knew, Anna Fuller. Anna Fuller used to live at Fort George, directly in front of the park, and she went back. She was in charge of the YWCA at the time.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
Your name Usher
yeah.
is a familiar name in Belize. What Ushers are you from? Am I correct that you're somewhere from the Old District as opposed to Belize
Well,
City?
no, I was born in Dangraga,
Ah.
but I grew up in Belize City. I went
Okay.
to first. I went to Holy Redeemer School at 5 cents and 10 cents. You know anything about that?
Yeah. That's when you have to pay that to go to the school, right?
No, I didn't pay. It was sub one and sub two. It was all public school. But they were
Okay.
mostly nuns. There was always a nun and a Belize teacher in each of those
Okay.
classes. But after I finished sub one and sub two, which was 5 cents and 10 cents, I went to
Okay.
St. Mary's School, and I started at standard one, and I went right through to standard six. But the reason I went to St. Mary's School at the time was because my mother had a sewing shop right across diagonally to St. Mary's School.
Uh-huh.
I think it was Matos building. There was a grocery store there, and they rented a little room in there and had a sewing shop. She and another lady, and
So
she
she
wanted me. She wanted me and my sister. My sister Alison was Queen of the Bay in 1955. But anyway,
okay.
I went through to St. Mary's School, and when I finished at standard six, I got 2 scholarships. I got one to go to St. Michael's College,
Mm.
and I also got one to go to Technical High School, because Technical High School was just opening at the time. This is the same thing that you know as Belize Technical College.
Right.
And I chose Technical High School. So I didn't take the one at St. Michael's College. So I was among the first students that went to Technical High School in 1952. On the 7th of January 1952, Technical High School opened.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent 4 years there.
Did you ever second guess yourself as maybe you should have gone to Michael's instead?
You know, I never second guess, but I often wonder many things that I do. I wonder what would have happened if I had taken this route or this choice, or So it's the same with Jamaica. I had a choice when I was in Jamaica. I wanted to go back home to Belize. There's a gentleman, Mr. Fairweather, who was ready to hire me in housing department. But when this opportunity came up to go to Canada, they were taking too long, and I decided, the hell with it, I'm going off to Canada.
Uh,
And many things happened to me in Canada. I could tell you hundreds of stories where I went in this direction, that direction.
what prompted you to go into politics? What spurred it?
Actually, I guess I was always a civic-minded person. And even when I was working as an engineer, because I became an engineer, I studied engineering, I became a civil engineer, and I worked for the telephone company. And during that period of time, I was always being involved in a community. People asked me to belong to their committee or their boards and so on. And one day the mayor of the city invited me to join one of the committees at City Hall. and I applied for the Race Relations Committee, and I applied for the library, public library. They gave me the public library. And when I got on the board of the public library, I met some politicians, including the city councilor who was the city councilor for the ward that I lived in. And he was quitting that year when we finished our term with the library. And he said, why don't you run? So on the last minute, I decided to run. And I didn't win the first 2 terms, by the way. I just ran the second term, and I lost the first term, I lost the second term, and then I ran the third term and I won it. And then
Perseverance.
I won 5 terms after that.
5 terms.
5 terms, 18 years.
Wonderful.
And then I decided to call it quits in 2018.
Amazing. All right. Joe, your mic is mute. If you don't know, let's see how it sounds once you turn that back on. Gregory,
Yes.
please, if you have any.
Well, I was talking to Mr. Usher earlier about growing up in Belize and some of the jobs he did while he was a young man, venturing out. And we were talking about how he had a cart that he traveled, took goods to different people. Would you share some of that with us, sir?
Well, like I said, I grew up in Belize, and my father was in Stan Creek. My mother was single. And before I had the cart, my mother, one of the things that she did to make a living was to bake Johnny cakes. So I used to go out and sell the Johnny cakes early in the morning. I used to have one customer. The first customer I had to be at his house at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if you know Louis Sabida had a store, or you heard of Louis Sabida who had a store in High Plain. Well, he was the person that he used to look after his chickens, and he got up at 4:30 to look after those chickens. And 5 o'clock, he's finished with the chicken, and he expected me to be at that gate with the Johnny cake. So I was always there. Anyway, out of that, I graduated out of that, and when I was at technical, I built a push cart, what I call a push cart. You know, the 4-wheel cart that you step on.
Yeah.
You push it. I was small, by the way, and light. I was not a heavy person. I don't know if I had 80 pounds. And I do remember that I had a hard time pushing my cart up the bridge. And I had to pull it instead of pushing it. Occasionally, somebody would help me push it. And I had to hand carefully going down, because even though you may look at
too
the
fast,
it's not steep. For a little boy like me, it was steep.
Yeah.
So I had a push cart, and I used to, 2 things I used to do with the push cart, by the way. I used to go to the well to fetch water for my mother. And there was 2 or 3 wells. I used to use 2 of them. And sometimes I go to, at the time we used to call it faucet. I don't know.
Yes.
Some call it pipes, but those are the things that were in the street.
Yeah, man.
This is when we didn't have sewer and water main. And the other thing I used to do with the push cart was that I used to go to Courthouse Wharf and run what we call run jobs. You may be familiar with the bicycle cart era.
Yes.
Well, it was the same thing that the bicycle cart did that I did with my push cart. I used to compete against the bicycle carts in my days.
You know, we still have quite a few of them around.
The push cart or the bicycle cart?
The bicycle cart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Push cart is too hard.
Actually, I was thinking you went to technical, and that was kind of poor engineering. You must come up with something, make that cat run up the bridge by
Well,
itself.
there were several people with a push cart at the time. Trust me, I was not the only one.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Panton. I forgot his name, who used to live on Craig Street. He used to work for the sawmill. Are you familiar with, when I say sawmill, what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
a Belize
By
Estate
Map
sawmill.
Street and
Right.
Northfront Street at the
Right,
corner there.
exactly.
Yes.
He used
Well,
to
they
work
also
there.
had Pilgrim Sawmill on Kinnell Side, so they had a couple of sawmills around. Yeah.
Yeah, but Belize sawmill was the biggest one.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That
The
was
BC one.
that took
Yeah.
all the lumbers and treated them. And the way they treated them was they just pile them up and let them dry out
Cure.
in the weather for about 7 years. So they had to have big yard. And the yard started at Map Street and went all the way to where Belcan Bridge is today.
Yes.
Which
Right
is
along-
all owned now by the chicken people, the Mennonites. Actually, they own. In fact, there's a big I don't know when last you came to Belize, but there's now a big chicken retail
Yeah,
food place right
yeah,
at the foot of the Bilkan Bridge,
yeah.
and they're getting ready to put a drive-through. Actually, it seems.
Is that right? I didn't know that. I've been to a few restaurants around that area there because that's where I have my cold food soup right at the restaurant right by the bridge there. There on
Uh,
Canal Side. And I love cold food soup, by the way. I just want you to know that.
yeah.
Anyway, well, I think that what Gregory wanted to talk about was that with this push cart, and I should say to you that up to 1948, they had stalls along Courthouse Wharf, along the water side behind Courthouse. And in
Yes.
1949, they moved them all to North Front Street, to what some people call Lee Market. Just
Was
between,
that by where the Mennonite Center was?
well, not quite. It was just down the street from there. It was between Pickstock Street and Victoria Street, in front of what is now Rayburn Alley, right along the
Okay.
river
Oh,
there.
I will
okay.
pop him and sell the syrup, thick
Yes,
syrup,
yes, yes,
in
yes.
that area.
Snow
Yeah.
cones. Tell the snow cones.
Yeah. And the Mennonite Center was not there at the time when it first moved. And
Right.
Estefan Brothers has a jewelry store there, and Arway had a dental store across the street. But anyway, I used to run job for people when the boats come in from Santa Neja and Manatee and all those places and sell their goods. They used to bring things like plantain and bananas and papayas, fruits and so on, oranges. Some bring coconut and so on. They would sell it to people who have little shops around the city, and I would take those things in my cart and take it to that place for about, and they used to pay me 15 or 20 cents, depending on how far
Yeah,
it
I was
was.
going to ask you. Yeah.
You have to remember that Belize in my days was only about 2 miles long and 1.5 mile deep. So everything was measured from the courthouse. I don't know if you're aware of that. All the
Yes.
distances in Belize used to be measured from the courthouse. So from courthouse to technical, in other words, let's say to Map Street and Freetown Road, that's
Mhm.
1 mile.
Right.
And there was a concrete post right there to say mile one.
Yeah.
Are you
And then up
serious?
by
Yeah.
Yabra, there was
Yeah.
another one. And then going towards Cemetery Road over Pongyard Bridge, there was another one. So I
So,
always say that
so
Belize is
Courthouse
very,
Wharf to mile one. So even now,
no,
if
Courthouse
you're
Wharf is
going
mile
Zero.
zero. Courthouse
mile
Wharf,
Zero.
zero,
yeah,
okay, because I think I remember the cross country cycling race.
yeah.
They used to start from Courthouse Wharf.
They used
Yeah.
to start right in front of where Barclays Bank or Broad is, just in that area. Actually, they used to start on Church Street first, and then they
Okay.
move around the corner. And then, but that's part of the reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they measured the distance correctly, no?
yeah.
Yeah.
Everything in Belize is measured from the courthouse. That's mile zero.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you ever look back at your career and say, "Boy, I've come a long way from pushing a cart, delivering produce to
You know,
to, to, to
I
administration"?
try to tell my children. I'm not so sure how much they could appreciate, but I tell my story whenever people ask me because I use it as an example to let people know that no matter how bad things are, you have to look for opportunities and you have to utilize those opportunities. And you can't do it alone. There will always be somebody out there ready to help you if you find that person or if they find you. And I always say it's not who you know, it's who knows you. So and sometimes it's one step at a time. Like in 1954, I got my first 1954 Christmas. I got my first job with Brody's over the Christmas holidays. It's a messenger, $5 per week. I worked for 3 weeks. I worked 1 week before Christmas, 1 week between Christmas and New Year's, and 1 week after. And then the next time school opened. So that was the 3 weeks holiday that we had. And then in the summer of 1955, they hired me again. This time they had me going to customs to deliver bill of lading. And then December they hired me again, and after that they hired me full time. And then I left them when I went to Puerto Rico.
You didn't get much free time as a child, huh? It seems like you were always doing something.
I used to play a lot of marbles.
Uh, on the way home or on the way to work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you made a good point, and that's why I wanted you to tell that story, Mr. Osha, to show that it's not where you begin, but where you end through all the efforts and commitment in
Right.
life that
Right.
that gives you the gets you to the top of the hill. You know?
Yeah.
That,
So,
Are you?
G Mike, just
Yeah.
quickly,
Yes, sir.
the money that I made from pushing the cart, sometimes I take it home and I give it to my mother. Other times I buy some of the produce, like the plantains and the coconuts and the oranges,
Uh,
and I would Saturday mornings I would go and park my car at the corner of New Road and Pickstock Street.
and
I,
retail.
and I sell them like the oranges. I might buy them for 80 cents or for 100 or 1 cent each, and I'll peel them and sell them 3 for 5 cents. Peel them, cut them, put a little bit of salt and pepper. Did I say salt and pepper? Salt and Ricardo.
Okay. Yeah, I remember
To
that.
give the salt a little color,
Right. 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 Right.
and I
Right.
sell them 3 for 5 cents. The plantains, I don't remember how much, but I used to sell them 2 for 5 cents.
So you made a little extra on that too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you. It seemed like
In
you
other words, what I'm trying to say is that I was a little entrepreneur.
obviously from
yeah.
early you had that spirit at least in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing I used to do, I used to buy chickens, young chickens for 20 cents when they were just about 2 weeks old. And I built a pen in my yard and I used to sell the chickens for $2.40 after I fattened them with coconut trash,
Trash. Yeah.
Yeah.
sprouted skin, and corn.
Oh.
That's quite a profit, man.
Yeah.
Tell me,
20 cents.
have you stayed in touch with um, Belizean issues and whatnot, and the political landscape? Are you abreast of all that happens?
To be honest with you, I do not. I'm not. I used to follow it once years ago, but I don't know if I don't want to sound negative about it. I always feel that I don't live there and I don't make the decisions. So the people who live there, they're the ones who make the decisions, and I don't have any control over that. So I don't have any criticism at all for Belize politics. I will work with anybody in Belize to try to help them as an individual.
Brings us to an interesting point because I have always been dead set against um, citizens that become citizens of other places coming to Belize and run for politics for the very same reason that they don't live here with the consequence of their actions. How do you feel about that, and what's your view on it?
I think it depends on how long they've been away, number one, and how long they're back before they get into politics. I think you need to understand the atmosphere and everything that is happening around you before you run for politics if you've been away. I don't think it is fair for the people just because you may have some money and you could spend it and give away things and get elected that way. I think that unless you have something that you could contribute,
Yes.
and I mean sincerely contribute, you should be messing around with it. I do have a hard time dealing with party politics, by the way, mainly because I like to make my own decision, and with the party you have to follow the leader, and that doesn't strike me too much. Even here in Canada, I might go and campaign with a friend if he's running, but apart from that, I would not run for the provincial or the federal. In the United States, you call it state and federal. Uh, and in our case, our city council, like I said earlier, is individual. It's not party. None of us, some of us may belong to party, but we're not running
As a
under a
party.
party banner.
I
Well,
see.
you said you were raised with your mother. Did she have a political preference? Was she a Price or Golson person?
I don't, the days that I were there, it was not that strong, but I believe that in a lot of days, there were the nips in those
Okay,
days. And
Mhm.
okay.
I say that because I knew Judge Price very well. He was relatively a neighbor of ours, so to speak, because he lived on Pickstock Street and we live around the corner in the alley. But I do remember that when my sister became Queen of the Bay in 1955, she was not a price person. But by 1958, somehow, Prisoner Creek opened up and George Price got her a house there. So we moved from Usher Street. At that time, I was in Puerto Rico. We moved from Usher Street to Magazine Road and Vernon Street. And that's as much as I know their political consequences. For me, Goldston came here to Canada, and I didn't know him at all, but I knew that he was a Belizean, and I treat him like a Belizean. George Price came here, and I knew who he was. He was the premier, and he wanted to go somewhere once. And this is way back in the 60s, by the way. And we drove him the way he was going. It didn't really matter to me who is who. I just treat all of them as Belizeans.
Services. Yeah, service.
Were you when they visited there? Were you already in politics? Were you already a councillor?
No. I just became councillor in 2000.
Oh, okay.
From 2000 to 2018.
Oh, this was way back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Constitution of Belize and the move to reform it? Have you given it any thought to that at all?
Well, I don't give it thought, but I hear about it, and one of the things that I say is that you got to be careful. The thing that right now at the present, the conversation seemed to be around whether Belize should go republic or not.
Right.
And my thought about that is that judging from Canada and the other Commonwealth countries, I would have to say Belize need to be very careful and they need to think that out thoroughly, because we might say that we don't need Britain, but I think we need the Commonwealth. I think we need the Commonwealth.
Well, yeah. I believe we need them both, actually.
But the question I'll say is that I think Barbados became a republic, but they still are part of the Commonwealth. But I don't know if that's what's in the heart of the current leadership in Belize. I think the push is to just move away totally.
I don't know that they know what they want. I think they're trying to follow in the Barbados model.
But Barbados is a member of the Commonwealth. They have remained a member of the Commonwealth.
Yeah, they have, even though they became a republic.
Yes.
I don't know if that's.
Yeah, because it's just the frame of how the government is, but they're still a member of the Commonwealth. I'm certain of that.
So, but I see now that they're talking about putting other faces on the money and in Belize. Even the coins and the dollar bill names are being thrown around. Some of course are just a joke, but I've seen some names like George Price and Philip Golson, of course, which everybody will take seriously. Is that then a part of the move away from England, if not the Commonwealth on a whole?
I don't think so, right? Canada has different faces on the monies, and I think we're moving away from the royalties on the monies, and even the past prime ministers. Really, in the past, we had past prime ministers on the dollar bill, and we had royalties on the coin. But I think we're gradually moving away from that. A case in point is just recently. When I say recently, about 5-6 years ago, we put the first black woman on the $10 bill. And I think that's the beginning of gradually moving out from that.
Hello, can you all hear me now, G-Mike?
Yes,
we can hear you now, Joe. We can.
I think it's a conversation
because I
needs
just
to be
can't
had.
get myself through on the other on my laptop.
One second, Harold. All right, Harold, can you hear Joe? Mr. Usher?
Yes.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, can you hear Joe when he speaks?
No, I didn't hear him just now.
You're not hearing me?
How about now?
I think it's something in your studio there, though.
I could hear you now, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was trying to get in. I'm hearing you all very good and seeing you all very good on my laptop, but you are not hearing me.
I could only see half of
saying
your
that I'm in the
Joe.
show and everyone can see and hear you. Anyhow, I will continue on the phone since you can hear me there.
Yeah.
All right, sure. Go ahead. Sorry.
And Joe, he said he can only see half of you, but I think that the better half, so I wouldn't worry about it much. There you go. Can you see him now? Uh,
Yes, I can see it.
yeah. How's the race situation in Canada, Sasha, as compared to say the U.S. Or even Belize?
Are you talking about are you talking about race relations?
Race relations between the blacks and the whites. Because you said that a black woman was recently put on the
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Is that a step up, or are they moving?
That's the that's the
Where they?
that's a step up. That's a step up. Um,
Yeah,
I think that Canada has a long way to go when it comes to race relations, but I think that they're better off. We're better off here than from what I see in America.
Mississippi anyway.
Well, yeah, so in the south it's worse than in the north, obviously. But I visit Detroit every now and then, and one of the things that I find with Detroit, I don't see anybody smiling in Detroit.
Yeah.
Whereas I could walk around my city and everybody smile with you, you know. But I do think that there is a certain amount of what we used to call prejudice in Belize. I think that there is that racism, and we have to work towards that. In my 18 years at City Council, that was one of my forte. I and from the time I got into City Council, I made a remark, and I made that remark throughout the whole time that I was there. And this remark had something to do with the what we used to call it visible minority. Now we are calling them people of color because there are so many of them. But my city had a population of about 300,000. My city is about the same population as all of Belize, by the way. I should tell you that.
Okay.
And we had a population of about 300,000 at the time in 2000, and we had um, 8.9% of that population being visible minorities. When I left in 2018, we had a population of 400,000, but we had a visible minority population of 20%. So the visible minority population is going up. And that's not just my city, it's going up right across Canada. Part of that is because we take in a lot of refugees and we take in a lot of immigrants. And the refugees are a large amount and they're almost people of color. We take in approximately 300,000 people per year as immigrants plus refugees into Canada on a whole. Some of them come to my city, some go to Toronto, some go to Vancouver, and it's spread out that way.
You
But
know,
it's
yeah,
not the prettiest situation. Let me put it that way, G Bank.
yeah, it still exists everywhere in the world, I believe. I don't know if we'll ever get rid of that.
Undoubtedly.
Tell me, now we get a lot of U.S. news. We don't get a lot of Canadian news.
Yeah.
We see what's happening in the U.S., the madness with the mass shootings and whatnot in particular. How is the situation on your side there? Are you guys, do you get news of that from time to time, or has that been
We
non-existent?
we have our share of people doing that, you know, particularly in the Toronto area, the biggest city area. Um, we we have our share, and just I think it was yesterday somebody just no, that's Belize. Last week somebody shot somebody else on the street in Toronto. Um, I think about a month ago somebody stabbed somebody else right here in my city early in the morning at 1 o'clock. So it's the type of thing that happens, I would say, everywhere,
But
but
that
it's very rarely gang related.
I see.
It's individual, spontaneous
Yeah, yeah,
related.
yeah, but you're talking murders. I
Yeah,
was thinking about the mass shootings where people just go into schools and shoot up a lot of people that they don't know, go into nightclubs and shoot up people that they don't know. I,
it's very rarely we have that here in Canada.
yeah,
Very rarely.
because that's frightening, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
unfortunately,
Well, they
uh,
have pretty good, strong gun restrictions in Canada, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be the next question. Yeah, how is the
Yeah.
how is that? How are gun rights and whatnot over
Well,
there?
let me say to you that if I was living in the States, I would have to say practically everybody carries a gun.
Uh,
But it's exactly the opposite here. I don't know of anybody who carries a gun here in Canada. I don't know of any of my friends or my acquaintances or my neighbors who carry a gun around with them.
Yeah.
In fact, I would go to say that most of them probably don't even have a gun in their house. So we're that safe. We don't have to bar up our windows and doors. We keep it closed, but we don't have to put bars all over the place.
Yeah. Um, I was wondering if you were aware of the situation with the ports in Belize, and if you had an opinion. The 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 port. I believe we have about five of them in the making now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that might be excessive for Belize? Do you have an opinion there, in one way or the other?
Are you talking about ports for ships?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you know, I don't know where they're going to build these. I didn't know that they were going to have five. I only knew of one, and I thought it was a private thing that somebody was building. You know, I got a little problem when I hear these things happening with Belize because I could go back to when I was growing up. The rivers outside of the canals, the rivers, they were nice and clean. You know, we used to be able to swim in the water. It seemed to be always the same depth, and the ocean was always the same. And very rarely that you get sponge coming in. But I've always been of the opinion that Belize City is built on soft soil. And I'll put it another way, it's built on swamp. And um, I don't know if you remember or if you know the days when you couldn't walk in many, many places just outside of what used to be Sawmill there, Gregory, what
Yeah.
used to be Cinderella Tongue, where we used to go and
Right.
catch crab. It was all swamp. And I don't know how they fill all those places to get anything built. And we
Right.
used to talk about how Belize was 6 inches below sea level. I don't know if that was just a remark somebody come up with, but it
Yeah.
Yeah.
was stuck. And Belize was always easily flooded. As soon as you get a little high tide, the rivers overflow and the streets of Belize were flooded. Victoria Street and Pixcott Street and all those places you're walking in water. And I'm not talking when there's a storm or hurricane. I'm talking about
High
for some
tide.
reason when you get high tide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to have to go to a sawmill. And the reason I remember that sawmill was all the way down at where Belcan Bridge is now is because it's down at that end that they used to dump the sawdust and the wood chips. And I used to push my cart all the way up there with a crocus, with 4 or 5 crocus bags, and fill the bags with the chips and put them across on the cart, pile up, and take them home to spread in the yard because the yard was flooded.
Given all that, though, Mr. Osha, how do you reconcile that now with climate change, and where people are suggesting that the seas are rising? Um, it seems that that certainly is the reverse.
I
The
think,
way you
well, and I wasn't going to come to that, but now that you say that, I think that those type of things will just make it worse for a place with that description that I just gave you with Belize. I think it will make it worse. On the other hand, places have built up. I mean, you take Berzal, for example. Berzal was just, I don't know if it was swamp, but it was just a piece of island out there that nobody wants. And Henry Young came back from the States and built it up. And look what it is today. So there's pros and cons. I remember when Fort George Hotel was being built and Barclays Bank was being built. They had to drive piles excessively deep that they didn't realize that they had to drive when they were building those because they could not find bedrock. So that was a big surprise for those two buildings when they were built in the late, I think Fort George
50s.
was originally built in the late 40s and Barclays Bank was built in the early 50s. But that was a big surprise. So judging from those, I wonder how much more we could take when it comes to a port. Is it going to wash away? Are they going to build something that will gradually wash away again and become shallow? That's where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just hope that it's not a waste of money. And I just hope that it's going to be something that is worth the while. I don't know where you said 5, but I thought that I'd only heard about 1.
Well, they have two of them now in dispute. You have one down south at Big Creek. You have the main port, and then we have the Stake Point, the Stake Bank,
Stake Bank. Yeah.
Stake Bank. That's developed now. So there are five of them in the making. One, the Portico one, of course, Magical believes is only in the planning stage, but that seems at some point will then, of course, Mr. Ashcroft has one that he's developing too.
That's the one
So
that I heard about.
yeah,
Mhm.
if you, given what you know so far, if you were to look at this, at what you experienced over there, what are a few of the changes that you would like to see made in Belize? What would you draw from your experience over there and say maybe we could apply this to what we have in Belize?
Well, the first thing I would, and believe me, I have not studied what it is like in Belize, but I've listened to other people. And the first thing that I would suggest is that we need a better education system. I used to follow Belize Technical College, not follow the college itself, but I follow the people who were graduating and the people who were teaching there. I knew some of them. And I thought that it was a big transition from what used to be technical high school in the 50s to Belize Technical College in the 70s and 80s. And then boom, one day they closed it down.
Yeah.
We need a vocational or technological school, not just one, but we need a technological school that could serve each of the districts. We have to remember that we're getting big now, and everything can't just be in Belize City.
Exactly.
Belize City could be the beginning, but you need one in each, something like that in each of the districts. We got 400,000 population, and if we have 4,000 population, I suspect that 20 to 33% of them are young enough to still be in high school or college. One
One of the
university or two university is not enough, and the university is for other subjects, not for technological schools. So that's the first thing that I would talk about.
yeah.
Greg, you were saying something?
Oh no, I was just thinking. As we look right now, they're trying to come into the constitutional reform. And with your experience, I was wondering, what would you think would be a way of giving um, local districts the ability and autonomy to kind of sort of get some more democratic independence from central government so that they can in fact pursue their separate development needs, because each of these regions, each of these districts have different needs than Belize City. And it's amazing to me that they all are central government, and it's amazing to me that it's always the central government dictating to the districts how they should deal with education and whatever it is, police, education, healthcare, and those things. And I'm thinking that the districts needs a little bit more autonomy. And I'm wondering, it's from your experience in city government, if there's a way to kind of make that happen, and particularly as we look into the constitutional reform, if there's some things that could go in there, and just some thought, and maybe from your experience.
Well, that's Gregor, that's exactly what I was trying to imply. I use education to begin with, but police force, for example, I think each of those districts need a different superintendent.
Yes. Yes.
It sounds to me, and I may be wrong, it sounds to
Yeah.
me that every time we talk about the superintendent of police, we're talking about the superintendent for the entire country.
Country. Exactly.
That doesn't make sense today,
Yeah.
in today's age.
Right.
They should have one for Belize district, one for each of the districts,
Yes. Yes.
or
Yeah.
something like that. Anyway,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go to that regional government as you are talking about, but I don't know if we could afford it. Personally, I think that the city councils need to just focus on the city, and that there need to be a government in between that regional government
Right.
and
Right.
that city council.
Right.
I'm afraid to say it because I don't want people to say that, oh, you're just following the United States or you're just following Canada. I'm just thinking of something that would work. That's all.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think
Yes.
that what happened is that the population is getting large, and
Yes.
you need to be able to divest some of that
Right.
power
Yeah.
others.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Well, listen, we really don't have to reinvent the wheel every time we need to get something done. There's no shame in copying from areas where something has worked and try to imply it in our area. No? Tell me, in your area, is the city council dependent on the central government in any way? Are there subventions like we get in this part of the world?
only some things. First of all, the city council works on property taxes. That's where they get their budget is based on property taxes and other charges, local charges like
License and whatnot, I imagine,
tickets
vehicle
and so
license
on.
and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Not license plate for cars. That's the
Okay.
higher level of government.
Interesting. Yeah.
But we do get tickets. If somebody's speeding along the street, we get tickets. We also get a certain amount of um,
Property tax.
money. No, pretty much everything. For example, the budget for my city is now $1.2 billion per year. When I was there, it was $1 billion, and 60% of that came from property taxes. And then we had other types of taxes, other types of revenue, like I said, tickets and so on. And then we get certain things that were sponsored by the provincial government. For example, transit. We could not pay out of property taxes everything that we need for transit. And people cannot pay for the transit the amount of money that it would take. And we want to encourage people to use the transit and leave their cars at home. So the provincial government had to pay some of that. Healthcare is not anything to do with the city. It was strictly to do with the provincial government. Education was strictly, we have an education tax also, but that goes to the provincial government, what you call the regional government, and they have to do that. So it's split up, but the city council only mostly work with property taxes and charges for any development. For example, if you're going to build $100,000, sorry, a $200,000 home on a piece of land, we're going to charge you a certain amount of money to build on that land because the city, has to provide the sewers, it has to provide the water, the drainage, and everything for that property once you build on it. So you got to pay your share of that. That's
But don't you still have to pay a water bill, a light bill,
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
all of that?
oh yeah.
So
We pay for what we use also in
Right.
addition.
Yeah.
okay, so you're talking about the infrastructure, having it in place,
Yeah,
so you
there's a
can get
basic
it.
amount of freebie there, small amount of freebie, and anything over that you have to pay for.
Yeah.
And the majority of people have to pay. And it's only fair because if we pay for sewage depending on how much water you use. So if you are going to waste the water,
You
then
need
you
to
should pay for that
account for
additional
it. Yeah.
water that you're going to waste. For
Yeah.
example, if you're going to water your lawn on a daily basis, and I'm sitting there and I'm going to water my lawn maybe only once a week, then you should pay for that extra
Yeah.
water.
Usage. Yeah. Well, Mr. Cowie was a mayor of Belize City, so he
Yeah.
knows a bit about that.
Well, yes, I was listening. I gathered that Mr. Osha was one time a counselor, I understand.
Yes.
This is a counselor where in Canada or in
Canada,
London?
in Canada.
Oh, in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Yeah,
The city of London in Canada. Yeah,
yeah, there's a city of London in Canada.
yeah, yeah.
From all you have said, we have the same type of governmental structure. We came from the same colonizer, so to speak. So you find that everything you were saying in terms of how governments are structured, the same we have it here, except that maybe we have just a national government, and then we have the subnational governments, which are the municipalities. We have 9 of them, which came from what was originally 6 districts that the British had set up for administrative tidiness. And then we have the that decentralization that we were doing over the last 30 years that was very much in this part of the world, no?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that from hearing what you did, I did 9 years at the subnational level.
Yeah.
I ran 3 times, and 3 times, well, I topped the poll in the city, and I was mayor for 4 years.
Yeah.
but I was involved in designing the institutional strengthening for the municipality, the largest municipality, which is Belize City.
Yeah.
So I had designed that, and working along with the World Bank at the time, and we were doing institutional strengthening in the furtherance of decentralization for the municipalities. And I think you'll agree that the whole concept of decentralization is out of the belief that the national government will not be able to do as good for those at the local levels. So wherever they have the economies of scale to allow you to decentralize, you'll find that you can be more efficient, more effective, you can be more economical. So the whole concept of moving from national governments, which had started, I don't know how many hundreds of years or decades ago, it's the same process that you all have in Canada. I'm a graduate of a Canadian educational system. And I've been to Canada more than once, but when I went there more to study the National Health Insurance of Canada.
Uh-huh.
That was my primary purpose as Minister of Health then.
Okay.
But I'm listening to you and you're experiencing from that subnational level. It's similar to what we are doing here. And our revenue base, as you have it there, the property tax is the primary source of revenue.
Yeah.
But we also have some other taxes like trade license, and we have like a license. It was during my time that we carried out some further decentralization. When we took over the traffic management, we set up the municipal court.
Yes.
And we were taking over some of the responsibilities from the central government. So I think when it comes to the structure, the governmental structures, they are similar like the Canadian system. The challenge for us all over the world, whether it's Canada, Belize, whether it's in Europe, it's a matter about leadership.
But I think what we kind of missed in Belize in the structure is sort of the provincial type of government where we just jump straight to central and municipal.
No, we started out with municipal from the British period.
Right.
Yeah, what the British did, they took the country and then divided it into 6 parts. That was for the administrative purposes. And when they did that, that's how we had the 6 towns.
Yeah, but it all governs still from central government. These separate district does not have any real power.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
we are not. We do have autonomy. We don't have independence. Of course, we cannot be independent, no. But we do have autonomy. Yeah, the Belize City Council is an autonomous body.
Yeah, but it doesn't handle the whole Belize district. The city council that's what I'm saying. The city council is dealing with that municipality. Within Belize City, there are lots of between Belize district, there are lots of different municipal districts.
Village councils.
I'm talking about a provincial government that would be for Belize district, Kaya district, Stand Creek district, Punta Gorda, and Stand Creek district.
Yeah, but we have it similar like it, except that we have 3 layers. We have the national.
Okay.
We have the subnational, which are the municipalities, and we have the village councils.
Yeah,
now,
but
all the towns are where the municipal governments are, and then outside of the towns are where you have the village councils, and that's the way we structure it. It's not much different from those 3 layers in other countries. But each one of these municipalities, where we have our city councils, we have 2 city councils, the Belmopan, which is the capital, and Belize City, the old capital. And the rest are what we call town councils.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
All autonomous.
Yeah, but what I'm talking about, like in the States, I don't know if you have the same thing, Mr. Usher, in Canada, but we have governors for the states. And that's the missing link that I see within our district governance and control in Belize.
Yeah, we have premiers.
Okay.
The premier the prime minister. Just like how you have governors, Canada have premiers.
Okay.
Just like you have president.
For each province, right?
Yes.
Yes.
No, we have a premier for each province.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
The,
So
the good the good thing about having this 6 different entities is that they don't all have to depend on the national government.
Exactly. Exactly.
They depend on this, I would say, the district government. And I mean a district government. You could call it, since you have prime minister, you could call it premier for what. In most of the places, they would have premier and prime minister. But I think that what Gregory is talking about is, let's talk about the village councils. The village councils need support of an
Yes.
entity that will look after that district rather than having to go
The central
to the
government.
national or
Yeah.
central government.
Right.
My problem with the central government, particularly in Belize, is that they have their preference for little things here, there, and everywhere, instead of looking at it on a larger scale. See,
all
and
right,
I,
gentlemen, we're coming to the midway point.
yeah,
Well, we want to take a minute to offer condolences to the family of a lady who was a part of our panel for a while on the show, Miss Arlette Gomez. You know, Arlette's father died, Mr. Rudolph Williams. His husband to the famous Maud Williams,
Okay.
after who the school Maud Williams was named. So she was a long-time educator. I believe he himself um, worked as an educator, where I believe is where they met. Arlie was telling me. Do you have a picture, CY, of Mr. Williams? For those who might not remember him.
Jagan was our public health. We call him Jagan or Maduro.
Uh-huh.
He was a public health inspector, very senior. He had retired as a very senior public health inspector.
So
Okay.
you remember him well, Joe?
Personally, we were very good friends. We were in the public sector together during the early years.
Okay.
I did not get a picture to show up, but our condolences goes towards Arlette. You know, she's one of our good friends. So
Yeah,
probably by next week I will have one. We put it up and let everybody know.
yeah, but anyway, we want to offer sincere, heartfelt condolences. He's missed. I knew him. Well, I knew a couple of children. Of course, one of her daughters was Bev Castillo, Miss Bev, who was a long time a politician and representative for the, I believe Rural
Central.
Central, no, Joe? Yeah, for the United Democratic Party, of course. So condolences are in order. Um, Mr. Asha, you stay with us for the rest of the show, right?
yes, yes.
All right. Gentlemen, as we move on, um, do you, Mr. Are you now retired? Are you?
Me,
Uh huh.
I'm retired from all jobs, but I am doing a lot of work still. I mentor a lot of people and organizations, and I help other organizations strictly voluntarily.
So
It,
you're still involved in your community work as such, though.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. Any plan of coming back to Belize?
You mean for good?
Yeah, to live.
No, I don't think you're going to see me come back there. Let me tell you something. Every time I go to Belize, and I used to go to Belize before COVID every 2 to 3 years, by the way. Last
Tell
time
me
I
you'll get
did it,
diarrhea.
right.
I don't believe
I'm
you.
serious. That's what happened to me.
Uh,
I go to Belize and I would go there for 7 to 10 days. And I was just telling my wife about this, reminding her about this yesterday, that I have to remember that every time I go to Belize, I get diarrhea. And I don't know what it is. I think that it's my head and my brain, because
yeah,
I
telling you.
started, I started using a cap, and when I started using a cap, it helped me. But it only helped me for about 4 or 5 days. My last 2 days there, I began to feel that damn diarrhea coming up, and
Don't drink the water. Do
well,
not drink the water.
Just drink the
well,
Belakin.
Yeah.
just doing the fellowship.
Somebody, I see why I keep putting up something about how did you handle the fires. Is that for you, Mr. Usher? Were there fires in Canada that were
Yeah. Yeah.
raging out the country? Oh, maybe the fires that sent all that smoke to New York City. How is that coming along? Are you guys
Yeah. Well,
managing that?
well, listen to me. I am closer to New York City than the fires, okay? And we also got our share of the smoke. And
Yeah.
I remember about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I went outside and I smell all this smoke, and I look up in the sky, and it was foggy. But the next day it was gone, and it hasn't bothered us. And
Okay.
and
It went to New York.
hmm?
It went to New York and some
it,
other U.S.
it went
cities, of
it
course.
went to New York. It went to New York.
How has the temperature over there been hotter than normal as it is everywhere else? Have you
Yes,
noticed that?
over the past few days, it has been very hot.
Yeah,
I won't say hotter than other places, but we've had some record temperatures
hotter than normal.
earlier this week. Yeah. The
Yeah,
only
that's
thing that has been saving us is that we've been getting quite a bit of rain also.
okay.
So that
Yeah.
saved us a lot. But it's hotter than normal, and it bothers me because this is just the middle of July, and we still have some hot weather coming up towards the end of July and the August.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen.
I was wondering, in Canada, do we have the same stratus of people that are so concerned about global warming, and then there's another group that thinks it's just a hoax, or are they more in sync that there is something going on? I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not sure that all of it is man-made. It might just be the natural phenomena of time and what's
most
going on
Canadians
with the sun. But
most
yeah,
Canadians are concerned about global warming,
Yeah,
warming, but there are
yeah,
lots of people who couldn't care less and who don't believe that it is. They think it's just a farce.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
but yeah, most of us are concerned. The thing that we don't like to do is to pay for it. We have what we call carbon tax,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and carbon tax is to help us pay to get
yeah.
out of this global warming thing. But
Hmm.
Is
it's a
there
never ending thing.
is there anything we can do? Is
Global
it
warming?
within our power to reverse that, or is it like some scientists believe,
Well, I
really
don't think.
just too late?
No, I don't think it is too late, but I don't think it's going to happen. First of all, with our mentality, we have become too accustomed to the casual life and the good life, and we have to reverse that. And that's going to be tough to reverse. And
Impossible.
well, I won't say it's impossible, but it's not going to happen in my and your generation.
Yeah,
I can tell you.
I mean, what I'm saying is that it will happen when it's forced to happen.
Right now,
As long as
and
it's a
even that,
choice.
I think it will have to kill a few people
Yeah,
before they
yeah,
really see it.
yeah. As long as it's a choice that we make, and the cost is paying
But
more and
I
more.
do my part just like how I take care of my body. How about that?
Yeah, yeah.
you said something though that you might have to kill a few people first. But how are we going to prove that that is what did it, and that the people didn't just die naturally anyway? So that'd be a tough one.
Few of them
Well,
washed away
I,
or
I
die
was I
from
was
heat
I
stroke.
wasn't thinking of just one by one.
Yeah,
I was thinking that it's going to happen with big floods
yeah,
or big volcanoes or big tornadoes coming more and more.
yeah,
We're getting more and more tornadoes. Look what's
yeah.
happening, and they come instantly. At one time, you could see the tornado coming from way over yonder.
Do you get tornadoes in Canada?
Yeah, some parts, but not. I, the last time we had one in my city was, geez, about 40 years ago.
Oh
So
wow.
you can't really then be saying that you're getting more. I know
No,
the U.S. seems to be getting more for
yeah, but
sure.
I listened to the news.
Yeah.
I listened to the news, and the U.S. seem to get more than
Oh
Canada
man,
now.
Yeah.
they're getting a lot of everything right now.
But that's
Uh,
because they're sinners. Oh no, sorry, I didn't mean that.
yeah, we're not we're we're not getting to that point yet.
Right, right.
We're trying to change it before we get there.
Yeah.
Now, but really, I mean, tell me something, and you have an opinion on the situation in the world because we see some wars and rumors of war. Are you a religious person?
Yes, I'm a religious. I go to church every Sunday. Let's put it that way. I'm
Oh
not a
wow.
fanatic,
Uh huh.
Mhm.
Well, so
but I go. I grew up in.
every Sunday is borderline fanatic, don't you think?
I grew up as a Methodist, Western
Okay,
Gate.
and you're
Okay,
still there.
and I'm with the United Church of Canada now,
I
and I go
see.
every Sunday,
Mhm.
and I take it religiously. How about that?
There you go. Yeah. Are you involved with the church at all?
Yeah, I belong to one of the committees in the church that is looking to redevelop our property, for example. And I read the scriptures every 6 weeks, more or less. I usher
Okay.
at the door every 4 to 5 weeks. as
collect
members come in,
collect the
collect the
collections.
offering. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Well,
type of the thing I do.
I think he's a fanatic, Mike.
yeah, I think he's not. If he's not there yet, he's well on his way.
Listen,
But that's all right. Bless you, my
well,
child.
let me tell
Um,
you, when I was in Belize, I was a local preacher in a Methodist church. How about that?
so you had that. You grew up with that also.
I
Yeah,
used
man.
to I used to go to Boom. I used to go to poorhouse. I used to go to the prison and preach.
I'm still trying to figure out how you reconcile though being an entrepreneur and a clergyman because you're kind of like yep on different ends of the scale there, don't you think? So, but you don't mind being a clergy with a little something in your pocket. That I
I didn't get anything in my pocket from that. I take out of my pocket and give.
uh, uh, all right, but it was returned anyway. Which normal happens.
It's given
It
me,
is in giving that you get.
it's given me a good life. How about that? A
Yeah.
long life.
Yeah, well, certainly. I don't want to go to the point of asking your age, but you talk about things that happened in 1954, which was a year after I was born. So
But there you are.
you obviously got me out on that, but you seem to be in pretty good health.
Well,
How are you doing?
Mike, I started high school on the 7th of January, 1952. How about that?
There you go. I wasn't even. I was a I guess
You were not even
being
thought yet.
conceived. Yeah. All right. So here's a lady agreeing that yes, we are living in the times of revelation. Do you? How do you see that? What are your views on where we are now? Are we close to where we're eventually going? Uh, if you have any idea where that is.
I think only God can answer that question.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
We've been going that same route for the last 2,000 years, so
That's
I
right.
don't
That's
know.
right. Only God could answer that.
Well, you
I
can
do.
imagine where Gregory is, right? You hear his
I like.
answer.
I like to feel that I do everything with sincerity and integrity. How about that?
I'd like for you just before we go off to say a prayer and try to do what you can for Gregory because I don't think he's quite ready to make that leap yet. Uh,
Uh,
wh- where do you stand, Gregory, on religion?
um, I leave everyone with their own religion and let them believe as they do, because
Okay,
it is up to that individual. I believe
okay.
generally that in our collective thinking we form the spirit of God, and I believe there is a creator out there somewhere, but I don't know if he's counting the number of hairs on my head.
You can't find him, Gregory.
Yeah.
Yeah, he might be trying. You know, Joe, you're a religious person. How often do you go to church?
Well, I maybe be sometimes long in between. I go for a Sunday, sometimes 2, 3 Sundays straight, then I take a break.
But you are a believer.
Yeah, I always believe that there must be something greater than us, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right,
And
so
I share that.
I
I'm not
you're
against
not
that.
totally.
I would have preferred to know that we have something that we believe in, and hopefully that something is that self-existent, infinite being, what we call God. No, and I have come to the realization long time ago that if you're a believer, you will have a sense of guilt. And I said that to many years
Yeah.
before that our imperfection is not our fault, the nature of us. But how well we manage that imperfection will determine what kind of person we'll be. And I think we manage it less best when we take the simple words of him and love one another as he loved us.
Yeah.
While
And do unto
songwriting,
others that we do unto
yeah,
us
the
that
gospel
we'd have them do
imperative
unto
is
us. Yeah.
the way that if we
Well,
all live by that, I think we'll have a better world.
I
Uh,
prefer to do unto others as they would like me to do unto them. How about that?
Yes, yes, yes,
Well,
yes.
that's the highest level of positive
But I
selfishness,
do
which
believe
is
in
good.
Jesus.
Yeah.
you
Sorry.
believe in? Yeah. Well, we might part ways there. Gregory,
I'm sure we
Gregory.
Well, I'm sure I mean, there's enough history that Jesus did live and walk the earth. Whether he's the son of the Almighty God is where I have some reservation, and
Well,
whether we
if
had yeah, I mean, I don't need to say more. That's my
Funny,
concern
funny you
about it.
said that, whether he's the sun, because we have the sun that rises every day, and shines brightly and is the light of the world. And there's no doubt,
Exactly so.
without the sun, we would have nothing. Um, and then you have, I am wondering if there wasn't a deliberate strategy to put the sun into a human form, so that we people who are so, we're full of hubris, and we want something that we can identify with, that seems so closer
Hmm.
to us then. and
Yes.
and I don't know if that's not where we're going, but I'm sorry, Mr. Oshan, I don't want to get you too nervous, no.
But can I
I'm
can
not
I leave you
I'm
with
not going to
something?
go any further.
Can I leave you with something to think about, Mr. Chairman?
uh
If you look throughout history, you will sense that the sense of guilt is the hallmark of our civilized society. The sense
Yes.
of guilt is when we lose the sense of guilt, it is the beginning of our downfall. So I am a strong believer that obviously we will sin and we will have maybe some vices, but don't accept them. Never believe that your vices should become virtues. They are wrong and they are wrong. And if you accept
Right.
that, there is hope that you can change. But it's when you begin to want to take what you knew were vices and you want to make them into virtues out of
Make
your
them normal.
selfishness.
Nor. Yep.
That's
Yep.
the end of man and the end of a civilized society.
let
But
me
once we
ask
have that sense of guilt, there is hope for us.
let me ask a question that's uh seems ordinary but extraordinary. Evolution or creation? Mr. Osha, what you think?
Well,
Evolu-
I'm not so sure what the question is, but I do believe that we are evolving as human beings, but extremely slowly. And I do believe that I was created. So I don't know what you want me to say.
Not that.
I will
That
tell you this,
seems
but
that
I,
Are
seems
I,
you,
contradictory.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
no, I
are
think
you
that I am.
suggesting the
I think that I'm much more handsome than my 20th generation grandfather back then.
Well, see that's interesting, because we have seen pictures that they've painted on cave walls thousands of years ago, and I see more people today that look like apes than those people who were on those walls. So I don't know. I can't see evolution reaching a stage and stopping. Uh,
I
so
don't know where you live, G Mike, but I couldn't. If I say that out here, I would have a lot of people come and look to burn down my house. So I'm
yeah,
not going to go
well,
there.
I wouldn't even worry about it. At this point, no. But I
what does
think
it how
that
much
we need.
is
Go ahead, Joe.
yeah. How much does it matter where we came from? Is it more important as to where we are and where we want to go?
That's a good
that's
question. That's a good point. That is
that's
a good point. Though sometimes there's some who say that you need to know where you've been to know where you're going.
But
Uh,
that's
Yeah, you
not
need to
as
know your
far as our
past
evolution is
because it's your
concerned.
past will help determine your future and your present. But for me, if you take the Darwin's theory of the origin of man, I will take what some claim to be the biblical understanding of the Adam and Eve beginning. I wouldn't have too much argument over that in the sense that we all evolve.
hmm
We are product of evolution.
we
And in
see it
that
in nature.
evolution,
We
there
see it
is
in nature.
revolution. And the revolution sometimes, obviously, can interfere with the evolution. But the bottom line of it is that wherever we came from, whether it was from Darwin's theory of whatever it is,
Start
or whether
walking
it's the
straight up.
Adam and Eve theory, I think what important is that we have reached a point in our time now that our past we can learn from. And it's not the past of whether we were from maybe an animal or whether we were from Adam and Eve. I don't think that's the past that is affecting us. It has nothing to do with what we have become, whether
I
we came from monkeys or whether we came from Adam and Eve. That's not what is affecting the world today.
I don't know, but I think there a question that would be reasonable to ask and try to answer. I think that evolution is, from man walking on all fours to standing upright, and we
Yeah,
see it in every human life,
I
from
agree
a
with that.
baby to standing up and being a man, and then twice a child, as they would say,
But
So
the period of evolution is a fact, no doubt. There was the Homo erectus, There was
Mhm.
the Homo sapiens, to mention the
And
last
Homo
thing.
sapiens sapiens.
So we know that
I
there
would
was
be much more
evolution. But
concerned.
the point I want to make is that I don't think it's about the core of what is it that we must be about today. The, the problems that the world is suffering today is simple as case of we have lost our sense of values. We have lost what it means to live a moral life. I don't mean to equate
But is that
necessarily
really
religion to
true?
moral.
Is that really true, Joe? Is the world more harmful today than it was in the past? Because sometimes we look at the history of mankind and
It was
how people
vicious.
were treated of all time. We talk about black slavery, but before black slavery, there were other type of slavery and service that people were permitted to do. So when we think of that, the world has probably, in some ways, become better, and what we see now is more reflective, and people, when they see things that are not fair, are voicing that. It
And
doesn't always get
I'm
resolved.
more free to voice it now than they were before.
Yes, yes, and
Which is
it doesn't always get resolved properly or in time, but it becomes a concern when in the past, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, some people were just committed to the life, and that's the only life they had, and there was no way out for whatever it is
Greg,
they were
I'm
in.
equally concerned when poor Harold can't even accept um, the evolution or some theory where somebody go try burn on your house that we kind of not that far away from what you mentioned in there, right? But I'm sure he was exaggerating. I don't think they would do that. How is freedom of speech handled in Canada, Harold? Are they strict on it?
Well, there are people who feel that they should be able to do anything anywhere.
Mhm.
I'll give you an example. During the COVID situation, we had some people who formed a group of truck drivers to march into Ottawa. Ottawa is like your Washington, and park their trucks right in the middle of the street and stay there and cook on the streets and a whole lot of things and make noise and so on. The government was pretty much the government of Canada, because that's where they're surrounded, was pretty much at a standstill. And these people felt that they had a right to be there. I
But
personally,
what
I
what was
personally don't think that they had a right to be there
What
because they
what was
were
the cause of
affecting.
the
what was the
protest?
protest about? What was the crux of the matter?
The protest was because everybody had to. They were the government was professing that we should be vaccinated
Oh, and wearing
and they
masks,
and
etc.
wear masks, and they were saying that that's a lot of baloney because the vaccination was this and that and the other. It was a setup to kill people and all whole lot
But
of
don't
bull.
you think people have a right to be vaccinated versus not
Not
being
vaccinated.
vaccinated?
So long as they're not going to affect me, if they want to be out in public, and we have our health department says that this is the situation and this is what we have to do to protect, then I don't think that somebody who is not vaccinated and who doesn't want to wear masks have a right to come near me. If they
But
want to do
Harold,
that, stay in
But
their own
yeah,
domain. That's
yeah,
the
you
point that I'm making. I'm not
yeah.
saying that
you
they shouldn't
No,
have rights.
yeah. But
you
then how do we enforce vaccination against someone unless we go to totally totalitarian
We
type of
don't we don't
behavior
force it.
that does
We
not?
don't force it. We just suggest it,
No, but
and we say you cannot work here or you cannot come into this premises unless you're vaccinated or unless you wear a mask. People, this came down to the fact that people who are working in hospitals, where the hospital says, look, this is a healthcare area. You have to be vaccinated to come here. You got to wear a mask to come here. And people would say, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not going to go to work. That's fine if they don't want to go to work. But then what they should be prepared to accept is that they don't have a job also. Because this was just a protection. Nobody was, that was the only way that they forced them in, if you want to call that force.
but I think that I'm fully in agree with you, Mr. Shaw. But I think it begins from in the case of Belize, and I think so in Canada and the United States, that your right ends where mine begin.
How about yours begin where? How about the other way?
Mine's end where yours begin. what
Yeah,
it means, and it's in our
but I
constitution.
also have a right to not be vaccinated, and
Yes,
if I
yes. No, you have a right to. You have a right not to be vaccinated, but you don't have a right to be with us who don't want you with us.
Well, hold on a second, Joe. Hold on.
I pay
You know, there's
taxes too.
something
Come
about
on
that.
now, come on
There's
now.
something about
No,
that
no, no.
because
I am
hold
saying
on.
based on our
If you're
constitution.
vaccinated, you're supposed to be safe. You're taken care of. I'm not vaccinated. I should be concerned about you coming near me because that you could
No.
affect me more than
Yeah,
I can affect you.
yeah, but that's no problem. Then you stay by yourself with your kind, and the rest stay by themselves. But that's not what we want.
Yeah, but that's not
They always say
that's not gonna work.
we went
No,
through
that's
that
part of your.
before.
That's part of
Separate
your
and not
basic.
equal, right?
That's
But you
part
know
of basic
what it is
constitutional
though.
rights.
You know what it is. I don't think you can blame people for being skeptical when we see how unjust man has been to man. There have been the Tuskegee experiment. There has been slavery of all different kinds, as was spoken of before. There has been atrocities galore that
There
we
have been
could go back.
lots of
Lots of experiments
experiment on
also.
people.
Yeah. You have to give people a little benefit of the doubt there. I mean,
No,
people
I am not
were
opposed to
nervous.
giving them the benefit of the doubt. But I'm saying that
You
from the
want all the
time
good
again we
you want
move
all the
from.
good space for yourself because you're vaccinated.
No, no, no. What I'm saying is that when we move from that state of nature into the state of our society, it was understood then that in that society we will all have rights.
And yours
No,
is not to dictate yours to
no, but it is
your
not for you. No, but it's not for you, the minority, to impose your rights on us, the majority.
but it's not even
But
we
how do
don't
you
know
know
if
it
it's
was a
minority
minority anyway?
majority. We just
Yeah.
know the
Because
state
what I'm
is
saying,
doing it.
what
We know
I'm
the
saying,
state is doing it.
now what I'm saying, listen, let's go back to the same COVID. COVID was another example of people's rights. If you say that I do not believe that I should be vaccinated because it can be harmful to me, I
Mhm.
cannot deny you of that right. Now, if at the state level, seeing that we have the social contract, we are living together, it is said by the majority that this is a highly transmissible disease that is facing us. Highly transmissible. Scientific evidence is putting it forward. The consensus is that it is. Now, once the decision has been taken that you don't have to be
Nobody
vaccinated.
voted on that. Nobody voted on that. We just had the politicians come and
No, no,
tell
no,
us
no,
go
no,
get
no, 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 no,
vaccinated.
no. In Belize, we voted on that.
You voted on
Where?
whether you should
When?
get
Because
vaccinated?
it
When?
is no, no. It is in our constitution.
That what? That you should be vaccinated?
No, man. Hold on. You're using no, 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 man. Hold on. You're using vaccination as an example.
Yes.
Right.
Under our laws,
Right.
the government has a right. Once the public health, the healthcare providers who rely on to make the decision, once they make the decision, and then what it does, the government then codify it into law. And when it does that, we are bound by that law.
But this was never codified into law,
It
Joe.
was, in the case I believe it was done.
No, it
No.
wasn't.
No.
Yes.
It
No,
Yes,
was.
the
man.
only,
Whenever the director of health services and his team met with the politicians, they used to meet. And then they would pass laws, those subsidiary laws that were coming out every
No,
other
but we're
week or
talking
two.
about something specific, though. I don't recall
No, I
any
am
law
talking
being
about
passed
COVID. No, in Belize. I'm talking about COVID in
that was
Belize.
the law was
I did,
passed that you had to be vaccinated.
No, man. No, no, no. It never say you had to be vaccinated.
Okay, but this is what
There
we're
were
talking
many
about.
laws that were being passed at the time
yes, we know there were
when the
some
virus was
there was
spreading.
some SI was passed relating to controlling and taking people off the street and things like that and forcing them to get vaccination and all type of stuff. But that was never a majority decision. That was a pure government decision.
Gregory, when you vote in the government, you
Hmm.
vote the government to make those decisions. The
Exactly.
government can't come back to you to ask you every single
Exactly.
decision you
Exactly.
make, whether you like it or not. You
But they
vote
are
them.
major one.
I,
This was a major
I
one, Harold. This
Yeah.
wasn't. This
but
wasn't
but
something
I
minor.
agree. I agree with that exactly. But there have to be consideration for people that doesn't want to get
The
vaccinated. And
consideration was so many people were dying.
Let me give you an example, Mr. Gregory. There were some business places that the owner of the business made the decision, and the law was there to uphold it, that you will not be allowed to be at work if you are not wearing a mask. I'm giving you a first example before the vaccination. No, you couldn't come to that work without wearing a mask. Otherwise, you will not be there.
yeah. Well, I don't have a problem with wearing a mask per se. I have
Well,
a problem with putting something in your body that you believe could be harmful to your DNA. That's was one of the concern that I give reverence to people the right to choose. I got my vaccinations. I got all of them, right? And I did it very early, but I think at the first opportunity that it was available for people that was like 62 or something like that, I ran and get it because I saw people falling down around me, right? So and I said, well, I'll take the risk that this will do better than, and it will not make me sick.
Or that that
But I
microchip.
believe
That microchip might be indeed being there. Yeah,
it probably it is. But
you,
but I do believe that people should have the right to whether they want it or not. That I strongly believe, and I do believe that probably you lose some opportunities. And for example, if they said if you're vaccinated, you could go here. If you're not vaccinated, you can't go here. I believe that there could be some of those, but not in riding public transportation, not in all the things that we contribute for equally in as part of the society when my tax paid.
interesting
That's
conversation. Kind of like after the fact, because it looks now
well,
that we're doing
you know
okay.
what? You know what? I'm an engineer, Harold, and right now I'm working. I don't know if I could say it, but I'm working on some projects that they're building mobile labs, and I'm wondering what the hell do they know that I don't know? We're designing mobile labs for full rollout for events, and I don't see people just building these things and
Yeah,
having
yeah,
them
just
and
for
not
practice. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, and
yeah, but
spending millions and millions of dollars. So I'm like,
because they learned by mistake.
what's going to be playing next, you know?
Because they learned by mistake, Gregory. They didn't have those when COVID was there, and they ran into a
Yeah,
lot of problems, but they couldn't serve the people appropriately. So now they decided they have to build these labs. These labs are probably not just for COVID, it's
no,
for a
I
lot
know.
of other things. So be able to move into any places where you got a health
Yes,
situation, a fire
yes,
situation, an
But are
emergency.
they anticipating maybe more of these cases, these situations like the COVID?
Well,
yeah.
the problem is that when COVID came, the first thing that people said we were not prepared.
So
So
we're
what are
being
you going to do?
prepared just in case. Seems
Just
like
but
a waste of money.
Mr. Chairman,
Uh huh.
COVID was not the first. COVID must have
I
been the
know.
fifth or the sixth
Yeah,
pandemic.
Uh,
yeah,
The
but
world had pandemics before.
yeah,
yeah,
but almost
No,
not in our
what the
lifetime.
world is understanding more now with the pandemics, when they had it 100 years or so, the blue plague and the others, we didn't have the kind of science, the medical science, the health science that we have today. We didn't have this kind of technology. So what we are beginning to do today, many countries, including even Belize, we are beginning to prepare ourselves in a more resilient position because we expect one will come again.
yeah.
It will come. And we have to accept too that remember, man is encroaching and the animals where these things are coming from. So the
when
more we are
when
encroaching on them, whatever the source of is, but we know that it will come again.
when you say we've had like five, you meant the last one I recall was on 1919.
Yeah, the
Right.
Spanish flu, I think. Yeah,
That was
I'm
the
talking about the world, a pandemic,
and
a
yeah,
before
global.
that, you mean
yeah.
before that there were some
Many
more
plagues
Oh,
and
yes, man.
plagues
But
and
he's talking over centuries, though, Mike.
yeah,
over
Over
centuries.
centuries, you
Yeah,
had the
yeah,
blue
yeah.
plague.
I'm saying, well, it's been 100 years since we had one. 100 years we had the next one. Maybe we could wait 90 years before we start a building thing or so, no? But let's just they're doing it. And let's
They're
just
doing
hope.
it. They're doing it, and
Let's
I'm like,
let's
What's going on? What are they
let
going to manufacture for us right now, or what are
yeah.
they
Let us hope it
manufacturing
never
for us?
gets to that point. Listen, man, man, our interesting being, and I don't know that we can always rely on him to do the right and sensible things. Many times it's all about money. How a few will get more money and take as much as they can from the few who only have little. So you have to really understand the skepticism of some people,
Yeah,
and that's all I'm saying.
yeah.
I myself, I'm very skeptical. I am a believer, and we have spoken about that before. I sincerely believe that God has a plan, and there's nothing man can do to thwart it. All we can do is to be a part of it, to decide to join the plan, or to go our own way, and that's not the kind of way I'd want to go. I hope that we all
Well,
come.
I kind of differ with you there, Mr. Chairman, and I will use an analogy which maybe I have used with you before. I don't think you should see God the way you are seeing him.
Oh,
Because
you
that
face
God,
him, man.
no, let me tell you what that God would be like that you are referring to.
Go ahead, though.
It's like, that God would be like that person who tied that dog. He tied the dog to the cart.
Uh-huh.
He tell the dog, I'm going to give
To
you a
Harold's
choice.
cart, to Harold's cart.
You see a
Yeah,
cat with Harold,
that
you
this
was
is a
pushing
horse.
around.
This is a horse-driven cart.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And he tell the dog, though, you have a choice. You will either walk along or we'll drag you. That's not the choice he gave us, my brother. He gave us he gave us the free will. He did. But he gave us our mind, our brains, and he taught us how we must use it.
But
And he gave us that free will. No,
you know,
it's not
you're
a
being
case that you are the person who sort of makes your destiny,
you're
That's it.
being kind of dogmatic, though, aren't you? Because
Well,
just
if
as
it's
you
being dogmatic, it's
that
being
that
the
is
most rational
your
dogmatism.
that is your belief, that's your opinion. But then you start out to tell me that my one wrong and your one right. How did you get to that point?
I got to it because I thought that we had believed in the same God, but now I'm beginning to believe that you have another God.
I, I,
So, so
uh,
being
but my God better than your God. My God could beat your God. But let's
so I
fun a joke aside. Yeah, yeah. Go
like
ahead, Harold.
these
Yeah.
questions that come across the screen. Who are these folks? I noticed that questions come over.
Yeah,
One
yeah.
Yeah.
came over about
Yeah.
immigration, and no one is asking me how the fire affected me.
All
So
right.
I
How
think
did the fire affect you?
the fire didn't affect me, except as I said a couple of weeks ago. I'm far away from the fire. The
Mhm.
fire happened on the end, and it happens up in Alberta.
So can
I'm
you
away,
see it? Can you see in the distance the glare
absolutely nothing.
okay.
One single day, just before New York got the smoke, we got the smoke up in my skies, but nothing else affected me. However, we had a few of our firemen who went out there to help, as did firemen from all over the world who came out and helped. The fire was all the way up in the east part of along the eastern seaboard of Nova Scotia. So the fire, in a sense, it did not affect me except for the smoke on one occasion.
I've been to
Interesting.
Canada once, and I never saw it as a dry area. It was always seemed. I know it was wooded. Some of the areas I went, British Columbia, and such. But it was green and very moist and damp. It seemed to me on those visits. Has something changed that propelling these fires, or
No, there are
what do you
certain
think?
areas where when the summer comes along, because of the nature of the plants of the earth, the grass and that type of a thing,
Climate
it gets
change.
it gets very dry.
Climate
And
change.
climate change. And for some reason, now I have to say to you, what I read in the news is that about 50% of the fires caused from carelessness. In fact,
Right.
most of the fire caused from
Yeah,
carelessness,
yeah, I can
but
go.
some of it caused from just people clicking or burning something, and
But there's many cars from thunderstorms, of course, lightning strikes,
some of them
and
did. Some of them, but
and I've learned from a long time ago that the forest starts its own fire to rejuvenate itself.
mhm.
That when the forest burns out, and the new grass comes up, that's when the animals come out and feed on that.
Yeah.
And that is something supposedly natural about that, no?
I would think so,
Yeah.
but I don't know what that has to do with the fire. The fire just caused, I think it burns because of the nature of the earth. That is, I mean, because of the nature of the plants and the grass that is, they just spread fast. It burns easily. It has a
Right.
different texture,
Hmm.
and once it catches here, it just keeps spreading, and it's spread into the trees. It's spread into the forest. You know, uh, the larger part of Canada is mostly forest. You know, the larger part. It's not
Yeah.
even populated. Just a
Yeah.
small percentage, just like in the United States, only a small percentage. But in Canada is even more so because most of the forests are in the north.
Right.
So the parts that is populated are those that are closer to the American borders.
You spoke about migration, and that in fact now that your city has more people of color, so
Yeah.
to speak. How is Canada looking at that that underpopulation? Are they moving towards bringing more people in
Yeah.
and
Yes.
filling the areas?
Yes. I think the goal is to bring 300,000 people to Canada, new people to Canada per year.
Yeah. They
300,000
have
per
a
year.
pretty aging population, right? And not
Yeah.
much birth.
Yeah. Very
Right.
much so. And if we don't bring new immigration, our population is going to start decreasing, you know, within the next 25 to 30 years. So the whole idea is to bring in at least quarter of a million. But in addition to that, those are selected people, and I'll tell you how that's selected in a minute. In addition to that, we also have refugees that we're bringing in. And now we brought people from Afghanistan, from Syria, and a whole lot of other places. Now we're bringing some people from
Ukraine.
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 Hmm.
But we have a different immigration policy for the people from Ukraine. Apparently, we are just bringing them for 2 to 3 years until the war is over, and then they could go back. But some of them are going to stay. We have a lot of East Indians coming here as students, and the idea of coming as a student, many of them are doctors, engineers, architects, and so on. They come, they study at our colleges for 2 years, and then they could stay and work for another 3 years. And during that process, they could apply
For
for
the
permanent
Residence.
resident status. And that's how a lot of them are coming here. So that increases the number of people of color because the people of color are the same people that we used to call um, um, visible minorities. They are considered the um, Hispanics, the Orientals, the East Indians, the Arabics, and the Blacks. Okay. Now you have this thing called BIPOC. And BIPOC, BIPOC, stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. So they have to treat the people, the Black people and the Indigenous people a little different because they're losing. They're not, the Black people are not getting their fair share of opportunities. So this happened in the States also. It's not just here.
is the
Yeah.
But I
opportunity.
want to I want to go back to something that somebody asked, and that is to do with immigration. I mentioned to you the students, most of the East Indian students from India, and we got a large number of them. I don't know how they're getting here, but they're coming here, and our colleges are packed with them. I'm not criticizing it, I'm just saying it is. So almost 50% of the students in our colleges right across, and we got about several of those colleges. We have 25 of them in Ontario alone. They're packed with East Indians who come here and they come, they study or they learn something. They graduated because they're smart. They could
Mhm.
graduate even without going to school, but they graduated. And then they could stay here for 3 years. That's one set of immigration that we get. But the other set of immigration, like for example, the person who asked the question here, let's just say somebody from Belize want to come and migrate to Canada. They've got to prove that they could make up a certain number of points, and they have to fill out this form, which the points ask a whole lot of questions. I don't remember what they are, but one of them is your educational level, how much education you have, have you played sports, a whole lot of things. It doesn't ask you anything about your color. They know where you're from. If you could reach a certain number of points, then you can apply for permanent immigrant status, and only then. So you don't apply for permanent immigrant status. You fill out the form and see if you're qualified first. You send it in, and then they will tell you whether you're qualified. And in most cases, once they tell you that you're qualified, then they will
You're
accept
good to
you.
go. You got a visa.
But you've
Yeah.
got to fill out that form first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several
I
people from Belize have asked me that, and I send them the form. But it's not easy if you're sitting in Belize there to understand the form, you know.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you something about your consulate duties in Belize, for Belize in Canada. How does that work, and what it involves for you, and how does it help Belize?
Oh, does it help where?
Belize.
Oh, you mean my honorary consul?
Yes, yeah, your honorary consulate
Oh,
duties.
sorry,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the other ones who are not familiar, I am the honorary consul of Belize. First of all, it's a voluntary thing. It's an honor for me to do this for Belize. Belize does not have a high commissioner's office, which is same level as an ambassador.
Yeah.
You know that the Commonwealth countries within them, they have high commissioners from each other.
Why
They don't
not?
have a,
Why
huh?
don't Belize have one?
Cost maybe.
It's too costly. I believe
Huh?
I think that Belize look at it and say the benefit is not worth it. So
Yeah.
we're not going to have one there.
What are relations like between Belize and Canada? Aren't we? Don't we have good relations?
We have good relations, but we are not buddy buddies. Let me put it that way.
Uh,
Canada treats Belize exactly as how it treats the Caribbean islands, and it doesn't give them a whole lot. About 10 years ago, it had $5 million to share among all the Caribbean islands. And
Yeah.
Belize got a little bit. Belize got some to spend a Cayo to fix up their market. They got some to fix up addition to BTL, you know, the BTL park up at the barracks,
Mm-hmm.
and one or two other things. I know that because I was involved with that. And the way Canada did it was to give it to the municipalities' head government. We have a thing called Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and I was on the board at the time. And they distributed as payment for receipts, so to speak.
Okay.
And this was to avoid the money going into any individual pocket.
Right.
Otherwise, if they'd send a check written like that, half of it would go into somebody's pocket.
Ooh, don't you
And
think
then
that
the
half is a small figure? Yeah, I said nine. But tell me, we don't see many Canadians in Belize. You talk about a lot of people going to Canada. Are a lot of people coming out of Canada? You see a lot of U.S. citizens,
they don't go to live there, but they go there to visit. They go to Belize. A lot of them go to Belize to visit.
but
We
they
get a
don't.
lot of Canadian tourists
Yeah.
going to Belize.
But Harold, sir, there is a not consulate, high commission for Canada in Belize, though, is there?
No,
No.
No.
no,
Oh,
it's the
oh,
same thing as me. They have an
oh, a
honorary
consul.
consul.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
just somebody.
Guys,
It's just a Canadian person who lives there that they
Yeah.
give in the same honor as how I live
Yeah.
in Canada,
Okay.
and they give me the honor. That's
So,
all.
Okay.
so
yeah,
how
when
does a person apply for a visa to go to Canada in Belize? Is it that we have to go to like Guatemala or
No,
Mexico?
nowadays
no,
you have to go to Mexico. It
we
used
go
to
to
be that
Mexico for that, Mr. Chairman. We
used to
just
Yeah,
be
have a
that
that,
you
that
go to
visa.
Guatemala, but they changed it for some reason. They changed it to you have to go to Mexico,
common
Because
sense.
and you
Guatemala claim Belize.
actually have to go there. Let me give you a quick example. Last weekend, not this weekend that just passed, the one before, we had the Garifuna electives coming here to play one weekend right here in my native country. And I've been following them to see when are they going to get the visa. They're playing all over the United States now in the East End, in New Hampshire and some of those places. But they had to leave there and come here to play for that weekend at a festival that we are having right here in the park. And they didn't get their visa until 3 p.m. the Friday when they had to play. They had to play here on the
Wow.
Saturday. And then they had to jump in a vehicle, travel 9 hours to the Canadian border, leave their vehicle and take a bus from Niagara Falls to London here where they are. But somebody had to go to Mexico and take all their passports to Mexico and get that visa and get it to them.
I hope and appear there well.
Well, I don't know if they got paid or they did it for to publicize
Ambassadorship.
to
Yeah,
publicize the
yeah. Spread their
the-
music.
I don't
Yeah,
know how much you know about the Garifuna electives, but the Garifuna electives is a group of people. It comes out of Ande Palacio. And the
yeah.
Palacio started 15 years ago. And they
The
still carry it
collective.
on.
I think a
Yeah.
collective, not elective.
No,
Collective.
collective. They're people from different bands get together on
Yeah.
certain occasion and play. But they did a super job here in London. We had a
They're good
lot of people,
musicians. Yeah, they're good
yeah.
musicians.
But their publicity for them, they're like ambassadors for Belize when they come here because people see that and they want to go to Belize, you see. So, so you
Yeah.
are asking how to get the visa.
Um,
For Canadians, they don't need a visa. They just go to the airport, Belize airport, and they pass them through. They give them 3 weeks, and if they have to extend it, they go to the immigration and get it extended. Belizeans have to go to
Mexico, like
Mexico,
you
no?
said.
Mexico to get that done. So that's the way they have to get the visa, but they have to get a visa to come to Canada. They can't end up at the airport and think that they're going to get in. It's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Yeah. But talking about Canada's relationship and their support to our government, in the past, Canada had been quite generous to Belize because I remember they were the one that had started the sewer program and water projects in Belize. And then somewhere along the line, things fell apart. And from that, we have never been able to build a relationship and
Yeah.
trust to get more cooperation from them. So something happened that I'm not privy to.
and what had
And
happened, Mr. Gregory, is that in the early years, I agree with you that it was Canada that had donated the sewer system to the city. But Canada gave us tremendous amount of support through CEDA. And Trudeau, the then Prime Minister, I think he's the father of the now Prime Minister. Trudeau was a very good friend of Belize. He was a friend of Mr. Price personally. He visited Belize. He used to come to the islands and he used to have some fun down here. He's a very flamboyant guy, as you know, the
That's the
outsider there.
present Prime Minister's father,
As,
by the way.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
all right.
And then we get a lot of technical assistance. We used to get a lot of scholarships, public officers. I myself is a product of that. So we had a lot of scholarships from Canada, a tremendous amount of assistance given to us.
Yeah.
In fact, the tax system in Belize was first the biggest reform of the tax system was through Canadian technical support.
Okay.
So we had a long-standing,
And
and
don't
I
forget
must
about
say
Belcan
this.
Bridge.
Yes,
Correct.
the bridge,
Then you
Before
had the
the,
bridge. That's
and the
right. You
water
had a lot of
system.
things
Yeah,
that in
yeah,
Belize that is still there.
but
yeah.
Canada
And
doesn't give as much anymore. They don't give as much anywhere except that they give
right.
it to the European countries,
No, they are
unfortunately.
not as they used to be. But
Yeah,
I don't want the Americans to be hearing me because we also host them here too in our hotel. But we do get a lot of Canadians out here in Placentia.
yeah.
But uh, what I like, quite frankly, the difference I find, and I'm saying I hope the Americans are not hearing me. And I told it to one friend of mine, an American. I said that you are different from the Canadians. I said, when the Canadians give us, you don't hear anything. They don't want any grandstanding. They don't want their name to be put on anything. But when the Americans are giving, they don't have to give much. And they want it to be in the news all day and night. So
Well,
we
and,
felt at
and
the time that we really had welcome. And I agree with you, it's not like it used to be.
well, I could give you two big examples, but I'll just give you one. Recently, when that capsule or that submarine went down to the bottom of the ocean,
Yes, yes.
trying
That's
to
right.
see the trying to
It
see
was the
the
Canadian.
Titanic. The
Yeah.
Canadians were the one who were tracking where it was. It's the Canadians who knew where it was, and
That's
Canada
right.
spent millions of dollars to track that and to find it for them. You don't hear anything about that. You
Yeah.
just hear about you don't even hear what the U.S. did, but the Canadians were, after all, they had to leave the Canadian port to go down there. You know?
That was from Newfoundland, is it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. But you don't hear
Interesting.
that. You don't hear. Canada was the one who was doing a big amount of the searching because
That
they were
well,
right
that
there
was
with the ships and
it,
the
it
plane.
was in the news. But what happened? You would have seen more of like as though the Americans were the one in the forefront when this was not.
So they like
It was
glory.
the Canadian.
All right, Harold. Before you go,
Yeah.
how about the next generation? And you speak about your time growing up. You see the children of today, how they're coming along. Is there hope? Are
There
we
is
gonna
always
be
hope.
okay?
There is always hope.
Hope springs eternal.
For me, when I was growing up, I didn't know anything about hope. I didn't think there would be any hope, but things happen. And the one thing that I say to Canadians, I'll say to Belizeans, I'll say to Americans, learn to read. And I will do a lot of reading and as much traveling as possible, but learn to read learn to write, and learn to add. The technology and everything else will come. But if you don't keep up that reading, we could talk for all you want. And if you don't know to use words, you're not going to get anywhere in this world. You know, if you can't explain yourself with words, you're not going to get anywhere. So you got to read to find those words and you got to use it. So you got to read and speak, read and speak. That's one of the things that I teach people, to read and speak, read and speak. And that's what I do. With respect to the younger generation, I think that they can't expect that everything will be handed to them. They've got to learn to work hard. They've got to have something in mind. They have to have a desire to move on. And therefore, they've got to look at that education. They can't say education will happen. It will not happen. They've got to go out and fight for it. They have to be committed to it, and they've got to do it for themselves. Not nobody else is going to do it for them.
Let me throw some letters for you. LBGTQ.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts?
I do not march in a parade. I am definitely not against them, but my church support them. My society support them. So I am part of that society. I'm not one of them, and their life might be different from mine. I know some people who are within the community, and anything that I could do for them, I will. I don't look at them as any different than anybody else. In fact, they're just like the way I'm talking to you. I'll talk to any of them.
Yeah.
And
And to me, they are entitled to every rights of the
yeah,
society.
yeah,
Well,
that's
exactly what you're arguing,
yeah.
Gregory. Apparently, you hold fast onto that philosophy there, no?
right.
Harold, abortion, legal, illegal,
Well, it's
allowed?
legal in Canada up to certain circumstances. I don't remember the number of months after. I think it's 44. What is it? I don't remember the month.
44.
But, no, sorry. 44 is when they give
You
birth.
fright-
More.
fright-
I think there's a,
Weeks.
you
No,
frighten
how
me.
much
Yeah,
weeks
yeah,
is that?
yeah,
Five,
yeah,
five,
yeah,
4, 20.
there's a
yeah,
certain time when you're not
Yeah.
allowed to have an abortion or to do an abortion on a person. I don't remember the date, but abortion is legal. It's legal in Canada up to this point in time. At one time, it was illegal. And we had a doctor who fought for it, went to prison for it. And we finally decided it's legal right across the country. Uh,
Given your religious background, do you believe that it should be illegal or should be allowed for anybody who wants to have it?
I think that there are certain circumstances where it should be allowed. Uh,
Certain circumstances, yeah,
yeah,
rape,
well,
incest.
yeah, and
Uh,
also if the child is going to suffer. Now I know
right.
people who are born and they live in a wheelchair all their life. I feel sorry for them. I
Or
know
the
that it's a
mother's
life.
life is threatened also, right? So
Yeah, but it's not just theirs. It's also the people who have to look after them. You know. So I am not God, and I'm not going to say yes or no. I think the woman whose body it's in have to make that decision.
Yeah.
yeah, which I don't agree on that one actually. I know a
Well,
controversial point. I think that
sure,
the
but I don't
that
think a man should be making that decision for
no, no,
them. I
no.
don't
Well,
think
I
so.
think well, if anybody will make it, I think they should both make it. Certainly, man will have to be the one to mind the child when he comes out
Well,
legally.
if they're partners, yes.
But
But
I
I'm talking
think
about
I think that no, well, I think that the body is for the woman. The woman, that's her body indeed. She can do what she wants, but that life is its own life, and if left to grow, it
and
will
that's what I said.
become
It
whatever it
depends on
wants to be.
it depends on where the life is in any situation. Is it going to be a crippled life? Is it not a life yet? Is it too late as a life or whatever? I think there are lots of circumstances where one
Joe,
can.
Joe is itching to get in on this one. I could see it.
No,
Yeah,
no.
now
What
he's
happened there
dodging
is that
actually. He's hoping you don't call on him. Go ahead, Joe.
no, there's a difference between what you want to codify into law and what is your religious belief.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we speak of abortion, we need to ask ourselves, well, what is it that we don't want to make forbidden by law, which might not be consistent with a religious belief? For example, some may say, well, whenever the life of that whatever is in that body from that fetus, whenever it becomes viable, that is when it's supposed to be forbidden even by law, because then it can be considered to be murder. But before the period of viability, and I'm looking at it first from how the law would want to look at it. Now, before it becomes viable, it can be said, well, depending on the circumstances of the person, whether it's by rape, incest, but then it begins first for me with one's religious belief. I think that's where it begins. And if you can live by what you think was intended for us when we are procreating, at what point can a woman feel justified in the face of the master that he can take that child away? And I believe that's where we should begin. Now the state will legislate. So a lot of the conflicts in the world today with abortion, sometimes it's because those who have religious beliefs in our democracy, they cannot dictate it. Like in a theocracy, the religious belief in a theocracy is what will prevail in the law. But when you're dealing with a democracy, and that is why you have all this conflict in America, because the judges that are on the far right, the highly conservatives, their whole thinking is out of religious belief. So those, the other three who is more to the left, their thinking is governed very much by their religious belief. So it's not really grounded just in simple. In the end,
Well,
the law reflects their religious belief.
yeah, there's something I do believe though. I do believe that the issue should be a states' right issue, but that doesn't mean it should be legal. That's how I see it. I believe that it should be a states' right issue.
I was watching the discussion the other day about a pill, an abortion pill
Yeah,
that they were trying to get to
yeah.
sell, and I was thinking that maybe the pill
And
there
you don't
should
even
be.
need a prescription for it now.
Well, I'm thinking the pill they should be selling a cyanide, no? Because that's your life. Your life is the one you live in. But the life of a child, I don't think belongs to anybody but that child. And it's an honor, I believe, for a woman to be able to carry a life until it's able to
If she
fend
wants
for
to carry
itself,
it,
no?
the honor is if
Well,
she wants to carry it.
if she wants to, well, really, that's where the question comes in.
But if
Uh,
they went that far, why stop it? If they went that far that it is a life,
well, that's my point, Harold. I think that the time to decide whether to do it or not is before you make the choice to go ahead and do it. If
Do
you
what?
if,
Have
to
sex?
well, not have sex, but get a pregnant. Okay, there are ways you can prevent it from happening. You can wear a condom. You can do it. A woman wear a diaphragm. There are many ways to prevent it. Not be promiscuous. I think that might be the answer to the question in the long run. Then again, what do I know? Gentlemen, we've come to the end of the hour, 2 hours. Harold, it's been a pleasure, sir, and an honor. Any final words that you would like to share with us or leave with us? Any sage advice that we might can follow as we go into the future?
oh my goodness gracious. I think you guys are doing a really good job here. And I think that it's worth the while to have discussions with people like myself and uh, some of the people from the past and some from the early this present generation. But I think that there's a whole lot that Belize has to offer. I'm not going to say to you that Belize is better than any other country. Uh, the thing about Belize is that it's growing pretty fast, and we got to be careful how it's growing and how to protect it so that it doesn't fall apart. And I think that the point that we talked about with respect to the governance and the government and the district and so on is something that needs to be discussed. The conversation has to be there, and it has to be there fast because Belize is moving too pretty fast.
Yeah.
400,000 population, 6 districts. You got to do something about it. I don't live there, so I could only tell you about how I feel about it. But the powers to be need to be able to address that. And that's far more important from my perspective than becoming a republic.
Let me let me echo an advice that you give to read and learn to write, learn to add. I'd say also never pass a word. When you're reading and you get out, Google it. And nowadays the kids have the access to
Easy, yeah.
right at their fingertips. What we had to go through encyclopedias to
Mhm.
learn. Gentlemen, Joe,
Yeah.
Gregory, and any parting shots there.
I just want to say thanks very much to everyone out there that joined us this evening, and thanks Harold and Mr. Cowie, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you to Mr. Hall for being on the show, and make sure you do honor to that honorary council, please.
Wonderful. Put in a good word for us, Harold.
I certainly will.
Gentlemen, good night.
Thank
CY,
you.
we out of here.
Take care, guys.
Good
Come
night.
on.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Double, because you're gullible. You cry for help, won't get muffled. Yo, we strike fair in the heart of beasts and men when we hold. What's this you that buzz at the wrist? With the move foul. Lone wolf when with the scout, or with the pack when with the prowl. Check the size of my insiders when I growl. Relentless pursuit, separate you from your cold. Even you have to run up on the curb. King, no master we deserve. Track you through your third. Yo, 0 to 60 in 30, some of the bucking 45. Fit it survive. Ear spin back, pre-visualize your demise while protecting my pride. Sole purpose is to provide, not easier, with my lioness by my side. Natural selecting, speed of a peregrine. Radar can't detect my timing. Radar can't detect my timing. Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from outer Belize water, or like a polar bear from outer Alaska. If I'm a snake, then call me a black mamba. Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from outer Belize water, or like a polar bear from outer Alaska. If I'm a snake, then call me a black mamba. Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from outer Belize water, or like a polar bear from outer Alaska. If I'm a snake, then call me a black mamba. Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from outer Belize water. Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from outer Belize water, or like a polar bear from outer Alaska. If I'm a snake, then call me a black mamba. Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from outer Belize water, or like a polar bear from outer Alaska. If I'm a snake, black mamba. Right now we sit down on top of the food chain, over vast territory, and I'm on the rain. Serengeti, one of my domain. If you don't find no bones, then we take the blame. Concrete jungle, rugged terrain. Look at the color and the size of my mane. We no play close, much less play games. We not do this for likes nor fame. I've had the disposition of a bald eagle. Miles above earth, we don't set the table. Spook your herd, watching you scramble. Pick off the weak and the vulnerable. Don't win, you know a tight circle. And knock off the one name, when we think they're not trouble. On the double, because you're gullible. You cry for help, won't get muffled. Yo, we strike fair in the heart of beasts and men when we hold. What's this you that buzz at the wrist? You the move foul. Lone wolf when with the scout, or with the pack when with the prowl. Check the size of my incisors when I growl. Relentless pursuit, separate you from your crowd. Even if have to run up on the curb. King, no monster we deserve. Track you through your turd. Yo, 0 to 60 in 30, some of the bucking 45. Fittest survive. Air spin back, re-visualize your demise while protecting my pride. Sole purpose is to provide, lot easier with my lioness by my side. Natural selecting, speed of a peregrine. Radar can't detect my timing. Radar can't detect my timing.
Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from Mount Belize water, or like a polar bear from Mount Alaska. If I'm a snake, then call me a black mamba. Apex predator, so treat me like a barracuda from Mount Belize water, or like a polar bear from Mount